welcome for a holistic creative chat. This is one of just a few, just a handful this summer, and summer of 2015. And I am so thrilled and giddy and honored today to be able to present to you today's guest. Today's guest is Shelley Klammer. She's a counseling therapist up in Canada. And those of you who do art journaling and expressive artwork and are in the online art circles might best know her from her work at expressiveartworkshops.com. And I just want to say, in my humble opinion, Shelley, you are hands down the most rich and generous resource online for art and healing work. And you present it in a way that is educational and inspirational. You present the teachings, the science behind it. You do it with grace. You make it accessible, and you provide prompts to get people into their process for their own creative process and their own emotional healing. And nobody does it like you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Haley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here and for all the work that you offer to people through your journey. And the other thing I want to add before we just kind of dive in and start chatting is that, and you can tell me, Shelley, I'm not sure, but when I first found you years ago, I started to fish around to see if I could find an interview with you, and I never could. And then the first interview I've heard of you was just this past month with BB Butler on the Painted Guru Summit. And I believe you have a link now to that on your website. And I'm going to link that with this interview as well, because you share so beautifully some of your journey of this process as well. And it might be informational for people that are getting to know you in this way too. So do you have other interviews and things out there kind of around and about?
No,
Okay.
no. And like I told you, well, that was my very first interview.
Okay.
And I have been, I wrote you over email a little while back. I honestly haven't been in touch with what's happening on
Yeah.
the internet at all. I've been working and writing like mad this last 10 years. I've been writing, and that's a lot of the content on my website. But literally, I go to the studio all day, and then I come home and I often write all evening, and I get inspirations about, how I want to write about art and healing. And I've just been in this sort of little kind of place of just learning and learning and learning and writing. And then when I heard from BB about the Painted Guru Summit, I started to explore all the artists on the summit, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing what you're all doing, like interviews like this over, video and audio, and I can't even believe it. It just opened this huge window for me, because I've been so focused on teaching and learning myself that I haven't really looked out yet. So now I'm looking out. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I know one of the things that we kind of behind the scenes expressed from that particular summit, but I see it in many circles as we artists and teachers come together, is this real feeling of support and amplification of the work we're trying to do with creative process, with helping people, with opening up people to their creativity, to the potential they have within them to work with their healing work on a personal level in that way. And so it's very exciting, and I'm just happy to let me just welcome you into this online circle that has been, I mean, and the funny part to me is I feel like you've been a part of it, but it's through your writing, and so now we get this other level to see you and hear your voice and your story on a whole different way. What a treat! So.
Thank you. I feel that way too, because the art studio, as I told you over email, that I'm working in is kind of ending in its incarnation. It's been a 67-year-old art program that's been running since World War II, with this big, gorgeous studio that has been my home and my community in the real, like in terms of not on the internet. And so I've had community with artists and art therapists, very rich community. And it was funny that this all sort of came in as I was going through this very deep sadness about the studio as it is ending. It doesn't mean we still won't do art, but it's more of going to be an art cart system and taking it out into more of a hospital setting, but not this gorgeous sort of central dedicated studio where people can create for, from 9 till 4, 6 days a week, So it's been just a blessing to find you, to meet BB, to meet all these artists in the summit, and meet all of the artists that you've interviewed too. I've looked at quite a few, and some of them are coming in now and saying hi on my Facebook page, and it's just like, oh, this is great. I feel so blessed.
Oh,
This new community is coming in. Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
I'm so glad, and I think what excites me most is to feel, because I feel like you give so much to people online. It's nice to feel that somehow we're able to give back to you too, and I just want to acknowledge that exchange feels really powerful and good. And so, one of the questions that I like to start with is if you could just tell us briefly a little bit about the evolution of your creative practice and what it's looking like today for you.
I love that question. I was a bit prepared for it because I see you always ask that
Mm-hmm.
question, and I noticed that you call it, season. What is the season of your creative practice now? Or I often think about it as chapters,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it almost just bears talking about how it's sort of evolved, because I think that, when I was in my 20s, I really wanted to create beauty because that's how I wanted to see myself inside. And I really needed recognition for my work. So my creative practice was very planned and even to the point of painstaking, but very, very focused on creating this sense of beauty that I wanted to be mirrored for, so that I could feel better about myself. Really, I wanted to gain self-esteem. So I think every practice that you do has kind of like like you're trying to get something out of it, some kind of nourishment. And so it started there, and then that started to feel a little bit empty and shallow for me, and I had these deeper, more unconscious feelings burbling up. And so as my body started to awaken through pregnancy and birth, I just couldn't create pretty things anymore. I wanted to create really ugly things and forbidden things, and my creativity was very private after that. So I needed to understand myself through my creativity in my 30s, and I I must say I was quite intense about it.
Mm.
Like I was like some days when I was feeling really rough and really anxious, I would draw all day, like from morning till night. And I would just, try. And a lot of the drawings were very heavy and a lot of, energy pulled down. And I was trying to kind of climb up out of the mire through my artwork. So my practice was very much about trying to understand more my dark side,
Mm-hmm.
shall we say, in my unconscious mind and my accumulated emotions in my 30s. And I think that was just because I'd repressed and just tried to be this very perfect, bright, cheery person until I was about 30, and then it just went, it exploded. I needed to explore the opposite.
Absolutely.
And so once I started, yeah, I think we all do, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to put on that front all the time. And so that was very, very private. And then it became very public in my 40s, and I'm 1 year away from, being 50. But the last 10 years has been teaching and writing, and it's been a very, I started a private practice online and a therapy practice, and it's been really, goodness, out there, just kind of, and very intuitive as well. Like really, really just this incredible, gigantic urge to write about art and healing. So it's been really a lot of writing
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of teaching. And so, the writing has been very intuitive. I would be at the studio all day, and I brought my little notebook because I have like tons of these, and I just like to carry them, everywhere, and write down notes all day, and then I go home and write at night about, how I want to explain what I see in art and healing. And it's been a really neat journey too with my private clients, my private practice clients as well, because oftentimes they'll get this incredibly strong urge, write about this, write about that. And it always correlates to what we talk about in the session. And then I'm able to send them a prompt afterwards. And so it's been very neat, very
Oh,
intuitive.
don't you love that? The way things line up like that, and it just
Yeah.
there's something about that when you're tapped into your
Yeah.
creative, intuitive voice that you can follow that and you just notice it. It just shows up with the work we're doing. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
it.
Life really flows. Yeah.
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 Thank you, and I love that that so much of it has been about writing for you too, which seems so, I guess, so obvious to those of us on this side of the online world, and that because that's what
Yeah.
we see from you is these beautiful shares and these beautiful programs you've created. So Yeah, I love that so much. And you also do, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do a good amount of collage. Like collage is a piece that's been very helpful for you. Or is that mostly what you do when you work with people?
Um, I do my own personal collages. I still do collages. I don't do as many as I used to do, but I still do. Yeah, a couple a week for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And I teach it too at work and in my studio work as well. And so that gives me an opportunity to play around with imagery. And I always find that collage is very profound. It's just like, I always see imagery that strikes me very emotionally, and then just putting it together, it's just like, oh, now I feel better. I feel better that I put this together. It feels like it's knitted something inside of me together, and I often find that collage is really good for people who don't feel comfortable with the intuitive painting process, such as yourself. Like I see that beautiful painting
Mm-hmm.
behind you, and I see that, you really understand how to work with paint and how to translate that from the inner to the outer. Some people have a really hard time, and I really did find that teaching painting sometimes was challenging for people. And you just put imagery in front of almost anybody, and they can put a few images together, and it will be meaningful to them.
Absolutely. I love that perspective and that you're sharing that too, because I find that to be absolutely true. And even for myself, when there are times when painting is not working, when
Hmm.
there's the stoppage, whatever, the
Yeah.
stuckness, all of that stuff that we work with, when oftentimes when we're resisting something we need to face, but
Yeah.
collage will be the stepping piece for me back into my painting practice, even, or my writing practice, which also I avoid if I'm avoiding facing certain things.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that ability to identify, oh, I resonate with this image and I don't resonate with this one, and to start to pull those together and do these collages and go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, here's some insight. It's like it opens those channels again almost. On yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I love
And
collage.
yeah, collage is neat because I really do think it relates to everyday life too, because what you notice in a magazine might be, say something about your emotional life. And it also applies to journaling, sojourn in the evening and just write down everything you noticed in a day that would tell you something about how you were feeling and what was coming up for healing and what was coming up for integration and what was coming up to be seen from inside. So
Mm-hmm.
it's it translates from a magazine to life, and then on into your nighttime, into dreams, because dreams are meant
Mm-hmm.
as collages.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question, Shelley, that's kind of custom fit for you too. I was thinking about this morning, and I know you'll have some insight on this. Particularly here in these kind of online circles, and that it's a different thing than working in person with people through emotional healing, through creative expressive work and emotional healing. So my question is kind of two-part, and it's around this. For somebody who is, say, for instance, taking some of your prompts online to do some self-exploration work, some healing work on their own, what are some of the signs for them to look for within themselves that can tell them that they need to reach out for support with others in community and or support with somebody who's professionally trained? I think this is a really important question for a lot of people that discover this type of work online.
Yes, indeed. And I do have people who have tried some of the prompts and do have deep feelings that come up. And I think, reaching out for support is always important. We all need help in some way. And if it's in some kind of a community setting or a one-to-one setting, um, number one, I think that if you're feeling like you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like you can't handle the emotions that are coming up and you don't know how to work with them or how to deal with them or even what they are, sometimes, yeah, things can come up really, really intensely, and you need to reach out at that point. The overwhelm. So much of inner work is just like knowing when to self-soothe and when to calm yourself down, get your nervous system into just a very calm place. And I mean, that's the way psychology is going today, actually. They're not doing so much dredging and going into the unconscious and saying you have to look at and heal everything. I have to myself, but a lot of people, especially people with trauma, they often recommend that you don't go back and relive the trauma necessarily, but that you learn how to self-regulate and you learn how to calm yourself. And so that's really important too. And I have some tools that are popular just around just meditating on what calms you, because I think that doing online work, you have to be careful, that you're not overloading your nervous system with too many memories all at once, and you can't be too wild, like, because spontaneous creativity really brings up stuff. It really
Absolutely.
does. So it's yeah,
I love
got to
what you're
go
saying.
slow.
There's a lot of richness in what you're saying, and I think also what I'm hearing too is of course like the tools. Isn't it wonderful that we live in a time when it's not about dredging up the old stuff, first of all, and secondly that many of the tools that are helpful are
Yeah,
accessible and even teachable, learnable from this sort
yeah,
of conversation. Even we can learn to practice them. We can learn to identify through
yeah,
conversation, through even reading guides and posts about them, which you do so well in what you share. And also, what I hear you saying is to pace yourself. And I think that piece is important. Uh,
yeah,
Sometimes when we, a lot of the sharing online around creative process is wonderful, and it's around moving through the fears and having the courage to move through the fears and step into it and face it. And I deeply believe in the empowerment behind that work. And I also think it's important to know when to go, okay, this resistance is very strong, and it's okay to slow down. And maybe today's not the day to push through that fear, but I see that it's there and that it's coming up. And when I'm ready, I'll know. And so I hear maybe what you saying, and some of what you've said is pacing yourself through that discovery and what's kind of coming up for
mm-hmm,
you. And for myself,
mm-hmm.
when I've been able to honor that, I know that when I slow down, then what may seem so very scary to come up and look at in my work about myself, or my life, or my relationships, or all of those things, it then will come in and be just as profound, but at a slower and gentler pace, and in a timing where I'm at a place to actually really be able to recognize and work with it in a way that's helpful rather than almost shocking. So,
Oh, beautifully said. Beautifully said. So I think there's this value around catharting things and getting through it very quickly. And I myself have made that same mistake. And I have a little online practice, a little e-course that addresses that perfectly. Where one summer I remember, I just finished a year of counseling training and I've been working full time and I've been creating a lot. And I was just so overwhelmed. And at back then I used to get kind of alarmed when I couldn't create all the time. And I just, my body, my mind, everything was just saying no, like nothing, no, don't do it, don't do anything. And so what I had to content myself with, because I had to do something, was just basically choosing one magazine picture a day and then writing a one line about it. That's all I did every day, and I often recommend that to people who feel overwhelmed, because you don't need to do much, but if you want to just gently look, and I mean, really, that whole summer of even just doing that, every message every day was just basically learn how to let love in, relax, calm down, don't try so hard, and but just getting those repeated messages through my imagery and my spontaneous words. Yeah, that helped me a lot, and it taught me that yeah, you don't have to wildly cathart, which I have done. I've gone on creative benders to the point of really like being manic about it, really. And I'm going to write about it, because I think that's a side that we don't talk about
yes,
very
it
much
is, and it's
as
and it's
creators.
very very common with
Yeah,
artists. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
we can tend to.
absolutely. I love
Mhm.
that story too, and that sharing, because it reminds me of how sometimes limitations on our creative practice can be helpful. So you said one magazine page a day on a one liner, and in that your pace slowed itself down naturally, very
Mhm.
organically, and in that you received the message you needed to to move through that gracefully. And it was your own
Yeah.
medicine. It was your own medicine. So,
Yeah. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. It's really good to pay attention to your pace. And if you don't feel like creating, it's really, there's a time, the creative process does need pregnancy periods where you're just nurturing something very quietly, like a seed within, and it really does ebb and flow, as we know. But we forget.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you're probably prepared for this question too. It's the question I ask everybody, and it's pertinent today. And so always just answer for what comes up for you. And it's, how do you define healing today?
Hmm. Oh, today, you know, I talk about my past about as being very intense and very busy and very um, prolific and productive. And it's so funny. I When I was a gallery artist, the very first question she asked me, like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, is, are you prolific? And I didn't know what that word meant at the time. I was about 20, prolific, what does that mean? And I looked it up, and it was like creating lots and lots and lots and lots of things. And so I set that as my goal, because actually, as a gallery artist, I was painstakingly slow. I was such a perfectionist, and I was trying to create something so beautiful that it would take me a month to create only one painting. And then I ended up creating so much later after that, in my 30s, when I went into the spontaneous art. Now it just feels like, whoa, back. Um, my website is feeling complete. Like I've had these directives to do the 100, art journal prompts, which I've done. They're complete. Now it's just editing. Basically, everything's almost edited. Um, so there's this completeness, and there's some kind of new form coming in. So for me, it's about quiet and nature and beauty and rest and mindfulness and centeredness, and not that intense, almost being used by the muse kind of feeling that I have had. So, where I have too many ideas and so little time. So now it's just, there's this very fullness and a kind of a rest, and a just kind of holding what's been created. And my website, I think, probably has over 100 pages that are visible to the public, but it also has tons of pages that I just show to my clients too. Like there's quizzes and there's articles, and so there's just like probably over 200 pages on that site. But it's feeling almost finished. It's like a baby that's almost grown up now. So
Yeah.
for me now, yeah, I just define healing as just, I'm moving into more of a mindfulness, quiet, spiritual time. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And yeah.
Sense a real mothering, and that's not even fully what I mean, but a sovereignty too. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, you've allowed yourself to overflow your offerings, and now you're holding the space with it. On What a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so you're very insightful. It's
Oh,
Thank you, thank you. It's true. It's like a sovereignty. I think of as, it's been a full expression of my individuality, and it's interesting you say that, because the next phase of my creativity will be going into more of a creative online thing with my partner. So moving from individuality and then moving into partnership after that was, to be fully in partnership, you have to really. Know who you are, so you can stay solid in your individuality. And I really needed to do that. I've been wobbly in my individuality. So it's like this huge, huge expression of my individuality, but I wasn't always like that. I was very, very quiet and very non-expressive in my earlier years.
how
Yeah.
exciting. What an exciting thing to look forward to.
Yeah.
Oh, Shelley, thank you again so much for being here to have this chat with us around holistic creativity and art and healing, and to get to know you a little bit better. It's been wonderful. And
Oh,
and as always, I'll put that link to your website below the video. And
okay.
anything else that you would like to share, or anything specific that you'd like to let people know about? I know you have so many free resources. Which one? Which one to tell them about? So.
Oh, sure. Well, I don't know. Well, there's always the free resources, like there's 100 journal prompts, which are
Yes.
art journal prompts, which are very full, and they're very sort of a study of psychology and how it applies to art and healing. Um, and I've been exploring narrative therapy recently because I've been finding that during my private practice therapy sessions that just talking is it's so rich with pictures and symbols for me and for usually any visual person or any person that loves art. So there's this symbolic, metaphorical journey around story. So I also just wrote a free little 30-day narrative therapy journal prompts, just very, very simple story ideas about just starting to explore your own personal story. And then I invite everybody at the end to do it again, because you can rewrite your story and you just keep rewriting your story into more and more light filled sort of positive ways of looking at what you've experienced and find the strengths and the resources in what you've experienced. So that's on my homepage, that little free uh, access to that prompt as
Love it.
well, that
Thank
30
you so
days.
much. And are you
Yeah,
currently
yeah.
still doing, you are still doing mentoring online as well too with people, just to let people know if you
Oh, sure. Yeah,
okay.
I have quite a few different services, like
Perfect.
just based on what people have needed, but mostly just coaching around um, kind of bringing your higher self into life, or your higher create, larger self, shall we say, and moving through those blocks of limitation. That seems to be most of what I do. And then some people who are doing their own studio work in the world want to know how to bring that forth. And yeah, so simply like that. And then I just mainly do my counseling work in Canada. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect. All right. Thanks again, Shelley, and thanks everybody for listening in.
thank you.